Okay, so this animation that you see here is really random, and I think it looks awesome. I started making something else, and it just kind of ended up here one way or another, and I thought, why not make a tutorial on it? We're not going to be doing any physics simulation in this tutorial, and we're going to be getting a free model online. The character there is a mocap character we're going to be getting from Adobe Mixamo. But the jet, we're going to add some very simple bones to that and just animate it with keyframes. And I think this overall result came out really well. So I will be putting the Patreon file or the blend file on my Patreon. I am allowed to do that because the different resources we are using allow for commercial use, as long as you give credit. And I'll be taking you through the whole process. Hopefully you guys are able to follow along. This is actually pretty easy as far as tutorials go. And you can see here, it looks pretty awesome. Yeah, let's quickly go into rendered mode so you can see. You have this jet here. And the tarmac is really tiled, but at that angle, you can't really tell that we're working at. You can see here, it's just so cool. This kind of jet animation. So let's jump right into it. No pun intended. Okay, before we get started here, there's going to be a few assets we're going to want to download. The first one is going to be on Sketchfab, link in the description below, by the way. And full credit to the author here, and you're allowed to download this. And if you look at the usage rights, you're free to share this, you can adapt it, remix it, even use it commercially. Okay, so we have the right to be using this as long as you give attribution, which I'm giving here to this person here, and the link is in the description. You're also going to want to go and click on this one, also in the description, and download the asphalt texture from Polyhaven, 100% free. You just go and download the 4K version and get just click here on the Blender thing, okay, and download it. It's going to download, you're going to be downloading a blend file with a file that comes with textures, and we can just import that material directly into Blender, which saves us a bit of time. And also in the description below, and you're going to, actually I won't put a link to this one in the description because you have to create an account, but it's free. Just type in adobemixamo.com. And what you can do is you can go to the animations, which is what I did once you create an account and you sign in. And over here under search, you can type in jumping, which is what I did. I typed in jumping, pressed enter, and then I just got this one here at the top. It says jumping, right? I clicked on it, and then I just went to characters. I've covered Adobe Mixamo many times. There's a lot of material on it, very simple to use. And then under the characters, I just typed in racer and typed in enter, and it came up with this dude here, which I thought was really cool. Clicked on him and it imported here. Now you can see this is the result, and I just left everything as it is, and I went to download, and I just made it 24 frames a second, which is the native frame rate in Blender. And everything else stayed the same. The FBX is what we're going for, and I just clicked download. Okay, now I'm gonna just actually cancel this because I've already downloaded this. And in my downloads folder, I have a jumping FBX, I have the asphalt, and I have the jet fighter. Let's just start by, first of all, extracting the zip file for the jet fighter. And what you're gonna do inside of that, you're gonna go to source, and you're gonna extract this one, jet. Just go ahead and extract it. And then what I did is I just took that folder, that jet folder, and I just dragged it onto my desktop. That's how I prefer to work. And inside of there, you're going to see a whole bunch of textures and this jet FBX over here, okay? So what we're going to do quickly is we're going to jump into Blender. And what we're going to do is we're just going to select everything, press X and delete. We're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Import, and let's go to the FBX option. In this case, it's on my desktop, so I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to click on that jet, and I'm going to go to Jet FBX. Open that up, and over here it is in the scene. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Alt-R to reset any transforms, and Alt-S if it's scaled, which it's not. And then I'm going to go G, Y, and move it to the forward part of the scene. I'm going to press 1 on my number pad to go to the front view. And then I'm going to go RX90 to level it out. Then RZ180. So in the front orthographic view, we see it like this. I'm going to go G, and I'm just going to move it over and place it here so the back wheels are touching the ground. Free to go into the right orthographic view, and then R just to rotate it down till all of those wheels are touching, and I'm going to just move mine back. So now we have a jet nice and in the middle here, and what we're going to do is we're going to make sure to save our file. I'm just going to save mine somewhere on my computer, and probably just my desktop for now. I'm just going to save it there. And if you now go Z and you go Material Preview, You're gonna see this thing has a lot of material slots on it already. Let's go over to the materials, and you're gonna come here to the little drop down and just go remove unused slots as a start. And you can see here is a lot of different materials on here. Unfortunately, these things don't transfer over. What you're gonna have to do, and this is what I did, is I selected the 2 top ones to start with. I think the second one from the top I selected. And then what I did is I went into my shading workspace. And with that second material here selected at the very top, I just went to these nodes here, and I just deleted them. And just went Shift A, search, I typed in principle again. For some reason, it didn't work when I used the principle I had. And then I'm gonna go Shift A, search, just type in texture. And yes, by the way, you could use the node wrangler, but a lot of people get stuck when I do that, so I'm just typing it in manually. Image texture, plug it into the base color, and then click on open, and then go into that jet folder that we extracted, and then get this one down here, that one that has all the jet textures on it. As you can see here, it has a name you guys can look for, and you can see that's most of the jet. Now, so what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to go through each one of these materials and go ahead, look at the textures that they have, and just go and find them in that file. So in this case, I can see this one is the same texture, and there's a lot of materials to go through, but you're just gonna have to do that, unfortunately. That's what I had to do, and go through them each one by one. Sometimes the principled shader has all sorts of really weird settings. You might have to add in a new one, but I'm not gonna be able to record this whole process because it took me about half an hour. And because it's something that's very simple, you guys can definitely do it yourself. It's just very tedious. And I actually just deleted a lot of these materials and just tried to kind of figure out to myself what should be what. I added just a few materials. So this is definitely something you guys can go through one by one and figure that out. It's pretty simple, and then we'll get into the rest of the tutorial. So you guys can see here, I have gotten rid of a lot of those materials, and I've just gone in here and kind of just figured out what some of these things are. I selected the individual bits of mesh that make up the missiles. I added the material. I went through just the textures till one matched up. It didn't take that long, but you can see here these seats here. The materials here don't look quite right for some reason, so I'm just going to select this plain body. Just kind of get it out of the way and just roughly select these seats. In fact, you guys don't even have to do this because you might not even notice with the final animation, but I'm just gonna do that anyway. Just select those seats, just as an example, assign a new material, and then just go and add an image texture, and then find whatever looks like the seat. So this, okay, it turns out it's this one here, FD546. Yeah, that one seems about right. But don't worry too much about having every texture just perfect, okay? Just go in there, select different parts, apply materials, add textures, go for that textures, add it till it all looks kind of right. I didn't even do every little thing on this side. It's just mainly this one side we're gonna be seeing it from. So you probably won't even notice an animation unless you look really closely. So just adding those materials up. What you're gonna do then is go back to your layout. And by the way, I just quickly forgot to mention this. What I did is I selected all of these glass bits, anything that made up the glass window, and I just assigned its own material to that, and I called that glass. That's just a standard, all that was just a principled shader with no texture, and we're just gonna add a glass material to that. So just make sure you do that for all the glass parts as well. But for the most part, that's what I did to solve the textures. And all you have to do then is tab into edit mode, select everything, and then go Alt J. That's just going to get rid of some of those triangles. And what you're going to do then is you're going to select everything except the landing gear. So let's just actually select the landing gear. So let's select the wheels, okay? Make sure not to select this little plate thing over here because that's the flap that's attached to the plane, but just roughly select the landing gear. So we're going to select the front bit, and we're going to go P and separate by selection. Then go back out, select the plane again, and then do the same thing with these wheels here. Let's just, might be easier just to select some of this plane topology, Control L, then H to hide, and just kind of work your way down, just hiding some of this mesh. Anything that makes it easier to select these bits. Okay, so I'm just selecting them. And then I'm going to go P, and I'm going to separate by selection. And then we're going to go Alt H to unhide all of that mesh. And what we have now is the plane mesh. and we have these three wheels. In fact, with these three wheels, let's just join them all together. Okay, so they're all one object, and now we have this jet. Let's also now select our jet again, and tab back into edit mode. And what we want to do is just roughly select anything that makes up this canopy over here. Okay, so I'm just selecting it. You might have to go through there a little bit more, just trying to select it carefully so you don't select the seat tops, but just roughly select that. And once you're sure you have all of that roughly selected, go ahead and press P and separate by selection and tab back out. So now what we have is these pieces. We have the jet, we have the wheels, and we have this thing here. You can actually select all of them if you want, everything in here, and then go F3 and type in set space origin and set the origin to geometry. So everything has its origin point a little bit nicer. But here we have it. So now after all of that, we can go Shift A, we can add in an armature, and the jet isn't exactly in the middle. So let's select that armature and then go Control I to inverse the selection. So we have everything else selected. Let's go G, X in a front orthographic view till our plane is more in the middle, like so. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into our right orthographic view. We're going to go over to our bone settings, and under the viewport display, let's make it in front so we can see through. And in our right orthographic view, we're going to select this bone, Shift D to duplicate, and G to move it up so it's in the middle here. And let's, while we have that, hold in Shift and select the first bone, go Control P and then go Keep Offset. So now this bone is parented to this bone. And what we're going to do is select this bone here again, Shift D in our right ortho, move it over here, roughly where the hinge is going to be. And don't overthink this, just roughly place it. Remember, this is a very rough thing. We're not going to notice all these little mistakes here. And then we're going to go and select this nub at the top, G, and just move it in here a little bit like that. Then select this bone, holding and Shift select this bone and go Control P, Keep Offset. Now we have this one parented here and this one parented over here. So now what we need to do is go back into our object mode, and let's select our plane. And then holding in Shift, select our armature, and then go into pose mode, and then left click on this bone here and go Control P and then go bone. We want to parent it to the bone. Go back into object mode, select the canopy, holding in Shift, select the armature again, go into pose mode, and then go and select this bone by left clicking on it, Control P and then bone. So now if we rotate it, you can see that works. If we grab this and go G, you can see the whole plane moves. Now those are the only two we really need, okay? You could add some to the landing gear, but they're just gonna stay stationary. What we can do now pretty much is we can now animate the jet kind of moving a little bit, and we can animate this guy here to make that effect there. Okay, so that is all we need to do for now. Let's go back into object mode. Let's save, and now let's go File, and let's go Import. Let's go FBX, and I'm gonna go to my downloads where I downloaded that jumping FBX from Adobe Mixamo. I'm gonna go Import FBX, and here is our dude. He's to scale, it looks all about right. So let's just take him and his rig, move him up, and then from our top orthographic view, we're going to go G and just move him here on the wing. So in our front orthographic, he should be standing about here. Okay, we're going to place him right there. And in your left orthographic, you should see him about there. So that's the right spot. I might select the armature and just scale it up just ever so slightly. But now you can see we have our guy jumping here on the roof or the top of our jet. And we only need about 50 frames. So let's just type in 50 frames in the end value. And now we should have this, okay? And we're gonna try and make it loopable as well. So the whole jet will also loop, so we can play it over and over, and it should be quite fun. But you can see we're starting to have all of our elements coming together. If you go into Material Preview, you can see this guy over here. Let's just quickly fix his shading in the shading workspace. Let's just go down and make that strength 0.1. I think the strength is way too much on his suit, but the material, we'll just leave it as it is pretty much here. It comes with everything imported. Just make sure to save, and also just go File, External Data, and automatically pack resources. So everything just stays in here as well. Let's go back to the layout. Let's also just grab our little dude here. Let's come to frame 1. In frame 1, we're just going to select his armature. We're going to go G. Just try and get him to be on that as much as possible. Okay, like that. I'm also just going to go into the SolidWorks view so we can see what's happening here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is animate this jet to match this guy. So let's select the armature. Let's go into pose mode. We're going to go over into our front orthographic by pressing 1 on our number pad. We're going to make sure this bone is selected, the one that controls the jet. We're going to go I, and we're going to insert a location and a rotation. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go up to frame 9, where he kind of bends down. You can see he's just bent down. And on frame 9, we're going to enable auto keying. So when we now go R to rotate this, you can see, because there's a little bit of anticipation as he bends down, right? As he's kind of putting force down, it should sag a little bit. So what we also need to do is then quickly go back to object mode, select our guy's armature here, and with auto keying enabled, let's just go G, Z, and let's move him down till his feet's touching. Let's go to frame 1. Okay, and let's go G, Z, and just move them up. So this keyframing here is separate to the keyframes on the individual bones here in pose mode. It's just the whole system as a whole. So there's a keyframe on 1 and a keyframe on 9. So he kind of sags down along with the jet. So let's select our armature again. Let's go back to the pose mode for the jet. And then as he jumps and releases, which goes up to frame 29, and he's just about to come down in frame 29. So let's maybe even go, yeah, let's just actually go with frame 28. Let's go frame 28. In frame 28, we're going to select the first keyframe here. We're going to go Shift D. We still have that bone selected. Let's take it to frame 28. So it's going, this rotation bone here that rotates the jet is going to go back as he's coming down. You can see he lands there, but his feet are now in the jet. So what we need to do is quickly go back into object mode. On frame 28, select our guy here. And we still have auto keying. We're going to go G, Z, and just move him up till his feet. We have the rig selected, just till he's on top of the wing again. So if we now play the animation, we can see this, right? Go to frame 1, hit the spacebar. See that little bit of anticipation there as he sags down, but now he lands again, and we need there to be a second thing happening. So let's go back, selecting our jet rig. Let's just go back into pose mode. And I hope I'm not losing you guys here, but from 28 and onwards, we're gonna go to frame 37, right? Because in frame 37, between frame 28 and frame 37, the jet needs to be sagging as that weight comes down. So we're gonna take that bone and we're gonna go R. We still have auto keying enabled. We're gonna go R, and we're gonna rotate it down a little bit like this, not too much. And then we're gonna also go back into object mode, select our guy here, the armature, and then go G, Z, and move him down till his feet is there as well. Now this is a little bit tricky because when this motion capture was taken, it was done on a solid ground. It wasn't done on top of an object. So we kind of have to add him moving up and down a little bit in object view on top of the motion capture data that's already there. So let's go back into let's select our rig for our jet, go back into pose mode, and let's see what that looks like. He jumps up, now he comes down. See that? The whole wing goes down now like that. And then let's go to frame 48 as he kind of like comes to rest. Let's go to frame 48. In frame 48, let's grab that jet bone there. Let's select the first frame again. Keyframe, let's go Shift D, drag it to 48. So now it goes back into that state. So on 48 as well, let's go back into pose mode. Select the armature of our guy. We still have our auto keying enabled. We're gonna go G, Z, and just move him up like that till his feet are on the jet. So let's have a look at that. Jumps up, goes down, and comes up. And you guys can polish this a lot more, right? This is very rough, but you guys can kind of see how cool that is. I mean, look at that, it kind of really gives that illusion. So let's do something with this here as well. Let's select the armature again, go back into pose mode, and this is really gonna make it look cool. We're gonna now select this thing here, and let's come to frame 1. And on frame 1, we're going to go I to insert a location and rotation because we want it to end and start the same. Let's just go to frame 50, and on frame 50 or maybe even frame 48, we're going to go I and insert a location and rotation. So we have it beginning and ending the same way. That's important for a loop. Let's go to frame 9. And in frame 9, as our little guy is kind of going down and there's a little bit of a sag, we're going to make this thing just go R. Let's press X twice to rotate locally on the X. And let's just tilt it up just a little bit. So see what happens there. See, it has a little bit of movement. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to frame 29, and on frame 29, we're just going to go R double X and just rotate it down just a little bit, and then go to 37, because between 28 and 37 is a lot of movement. And we're going to go R double X, and we're going to really bring it down quite a bit like that. And then it'll automatically go back to that keyframe we duplicated. So let's have a look at that. From frame 1, pressing the space bar. See that? Again, the timing here is a little bit off. So let's just drag through. He jumps. So maybe we'll drag this frame up just a little bit more till the timing just feels right. Okay, it's happening just a little bit too early. So you might just have to drag these keyframes around till it kind of makes sense. So I might drag this keyframe forward even a little bit more. Or maybe just one here. This is one of those things you really have to kind of just drag it through till it really kind of just looks right. I might just get rid of this keyframe here and delete that altogether. Okay, so here you can see I've just toyed around with it just a little bit more. What I've done here on frame 1 and frame 48, just to recap, they're both the same. And I just had a little bit of a movement between here and frame 12, that's where I moved it to. And then it's kind of a bit of a hold till 28. It's not quite a hold, but almost a hold. These two frames are almost the same. And then between 28 and 39, it kind of goes down a little bit and then goes back to its original position. So we just have that little bit of movement in there like that, okay? And that really adds a lot more life to this thing. So I'm sorry if that was confusing. Sometimes animation is one of those things where you can only practice it so many times, but when you do the tutorial, it's always a little bit different. But I hope you guys get the overall idea here. I'm going to turn off auto keying. I'm going to make sure to save this. So I'm just going to Control S. And if you now go Z and you go material preview, you can kind of already get an idea of this. So what we're going to do next is we're simply going to add in a tarmac and then put in a HDRI and kind of really make this look cool for our render. So make sure to save. Okay, so what we're going to do now is make sure first of all you're out of pose mode. We just want to be in object mode. And to make things a little bit nicer, let's just select this armature. Let's just go M, new collection. Let's just call it rig and go OK. So we can just hide that. Okay, we don't need to see that. And we can do the same thing with our guy here. We can select his rig and just move that as well there. So now we just have the meshes. And in our main collection, let's just select that. Let's just go Shift A, add in a plane. Not this plane, right? Little joke there. And let's scale it up real big. Okay, I'm gonna go about that much. In my top view, I'm just gonna move it this way. So we're gonna be adding our camera right about here. So I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna go Shift A, I'm gonna add in a camera. 0 on the number pad to go into camera view, then G, middle mouse button, zoom out, and then G, Z, move it up. So you guys can position your camera however you like. I'm gonna go something like that for now. I'm gonna go to my camera settings and make it a focal length of 140. And I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit more. It's just my personal preference. You guys can do whatever you wanna do. Okay, go ahead. I might change it later on. Let's go to cycles or our render settings. Let's make the engine cycles. I'm gonna make it mine GPU. You can leave it at CPU if you don't have a GPU. And under the render, let's just make the sample amount 90, the max amount of samples. Make sure the noise is enabled, okay? So now we have a camera here. And let's quickly add in some environment lighting. So I forgot in the beginning to show you guys this. We also want to download this HDRI. I'll also put a link to that in the description. So it's on HDRI Haven. Just come here and click download. I recommend you go for 4K or higher. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly download that. Okay, so it's finished downloading. I'm just going to take that EXR file and I'm going to drag it onto my desktop. I'm going to go back into Blender. I'm going to go to the world properties and let's just go to our color under here. Let's make it an environment texture. Let's click on open and then go, in my case, that's on my desktop. I'm going to get that EXR file, click on it. And now if we go Z and we go rendered, we can see this is what we have. I'm going to go Control B in camera view just to drag this limit box over the camera so we don't see it anywhere else but in the camera view. You can see here, this is what we have. It looks pretty cool. We just need to do some stuff with our materials. With the lighting, it's pretty much good with the HDRI. You can add in more lights if you want to, but for now, let's just focus on the material. So earlier, we added a glass material. to our jet, or at least I told you guys to make sure you just add a separate material to the glass parts. All you have to do then is grab that material and simply go, and if it's a printable shader, which I recommend, just go and turn up the transmission to make it kind of like a glass. And then you can go and bring down that roughness almost all the way down to 0. So I dragged up the wrong transmission. I did the transmission roughness. Make sure it's the transmission. There we go. Okay, now the IOR there doesn't look right. You can find the exact one of glass online. I'm just going to go until I think it looks okay. I don't really care here to be too precise. It's probably not 0.92. You could just look up the refractive index of glass, but I'm trying not to go too overboard with this. Also, the HRI here in the background, let's just go over to our shading workspace. Over here, let's change it from object to world. And I'm just going to go Shift A, search, and type in texture, and type in coordinate. Let's make it generated, plug it into the vector. And then let's just get a mapping node as well. Once again, you use Node Wrangler if you have it. Like I said, I use it sometimes with people like, how did you do that? So, you know, that's why I do this. And then go into your camera view, press Z, go rendered. And now we can take this Z value here on the rotation, and we can rotate our HRI environment to our liking. So I'm going to go with something that I think looks good. And this is personal preference. I'm going to keep rotating it. Okay, that looks cool to me. What I'm going to do, and this is totally cheating, but I'm going to go and rotate the other ones as well, just to take it a little bit lower like that. Totally cheating, but anyway, that's what I'm going to do. I know that's not accurate at all, but the main point is just seeing this. Then I'm going to select the tarmac here. I'm just going to go back into the object here. And now we're going to go File, and we're going to go Append. And remember that tarmac material we downloaded earlier, that's my download, so I'm just going to go there. And actually, I think I have to extract that zip, so I'm just going to go to my download. So here we have that asphalt material. I'm just going to extract it. Okay, now we can do that. I'm going to go back into Blender, and I'm going to go File, I'm going to go Append, and I'm going to now go into my downloads again, and here I can see asphalt. That's the extract folder. I'm going to go in there. Here's the asphalt blend file. I'm going to click on it, and then just go into material, and then click on asphalt _ 02. And now we can just come here to the drop down with that plane selected, the floor plane, not the jet plane. And let's just go and give it that asphalt material, as you can see, and it's all over the place because it has actual displacement. Let's just come here and just disconnect the displacement. We don't want to see that, okay? And what we can do now is just take this, delete it as well, that displacement node. Let's go Shift A, search, and get a bump node. Place it over here, and now just plug that guy into the height, like so. But what we have here is the scale is way wrong. So let's just first of all go Control A and apply the scale on this. And then over here, we can take these values and let's just change them. I'm going to go something like 12. You guys can pick whatever you want, but you get the idea here. There we have now some asphalt. You can also go back into your scene layout. And what I did is I went Shift A and I just added in a sunlight. And yes, I know it's probably not accurate because of the direction here, but I'm just going to go, oops, that's not a sunlight. Yeah, sunlight. I'm just going to go place it here anyway, and I'm just going to increase the strength to something like 7, and I'm just going to, yeah, maybe bring it down a bit, just for a little bit of lighting here, because it seems a little bit too dark. You can always rotate that light around, try and make it match up with your HDRI if you can. Spend as much time as you want on the details of this thing, but I'm trying to just do this quickly for the tutorial's sake. But yeah, you guys get the idea here. What I did as well is I grabbed my main jet body when I was doing my original, and under my shading I selected that material for the jet body, and I increased the metallic value almost all the way up to a full value of 1. And I took this image texture and I plugged it into a color ramp, and then I fed that color ramp into a bump. I'm just showing you guys what I did. And then I took that height and plugged it into the normal, and I just made the strength 0.07, something a bit lower. And that just gave it a little bit of texture. But do as much things to this as you guys want. I'm going to quickly go ahead, go render image, and just see what this looks like. Okay, cool. That looked okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to our layout, and let's go to our output settings. Let's go to the output folder. I'm just going to select my desktop. Then I'm going to make the file format an FFmpeg video, and under the encoding, I'm going to make the container an MP4peg. Then I'm going to make sure to save. And now if you go render and render animation, it'll render this out as a loopable animation. Okay, so I'm going to quickly do that, and then we're going to see what we have. Okay, so before you go ahead and actually render it, I was looking at the final render result, and I noticed there were a few things I forgot to do. Primarily was just adding some motion blur. So make sure to go to your render settings and go down and enable motion blur. That's really important. And also just with the world lighting, I think it was just a little bit too high. I went up, I don't know if I showed it, but I took it a little bit too high. So I just brought it back down to a strength of 1. Okay, so the motion blur was a really big part of it. I can't believe I forgot that. It looks really dead without motion blur. But now that I have that done, you can finally go ahead. And I also just slightly changed my HDRI position, but that's just what I noticed when I was done rendering. But you know, if you guys went and pressed rendered and waited out before you saw this bit, it's fine. It's not a big deal, but I just think that adds to it. So I'm going to go render and render animation. And here we have the final result. I have tweaked things a little bit here and there, but overall, this is what we have been doing in this tutorial. And here you can see I have gone ahead and cleaned up the scene a little bit. I've made things a bit nicer, a bit more organized. So this is going to be on Patreon, this file. And you guys can check that out in the description below. So yeah, this has been the tutorial. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys next time for another tutorial.